Welcome back, guys. First thing out of the gate, won't be doing Financial Friday next week. We'll be at about 30,000 feet when the market closes, and we'll be trying to recover from that flight. Yay! We're going. Okay, so a little bit of news on the Forex front, and what else could we say? We'll be running the ticker, of course, and whatever else comes to my mind. But it'll all be money related. Today's about money. Hey guys, if you're liking the content, please like, subscribe, and comment. We'd sure appreciate it. So let's start off by looking at a chart of the Euro-US. And you can see there was a heavy move midweek, September 13th. And as a result, if we now, and I'm not going to get into why, I'm not going to get into news, I'm not going to get into indicators or anything. Just suffice to say is that there was a fairly strong move in the US dollar against the euro, and the net result is the US held its own against the peso and then crawled its way along, and it's slowly rise through the week. But now let's look at the other currencies. The Peso against all other currencies has done really well. Because of a downturn on the euro, the peso has done well. Here's the Canadian, and then the Australian, the New Zealand, finally the pound, and the euro. So interesting that this happened. Now, one of the reasons that this may have compounded in the Philippines was that Marcos also did an announcement which has been received positively by many parts of the world. Again, I'm not going to get into it. You guys can look at this all up because I'm not formally trading in Forex, so I'm not diving and doing the deep dives anymore. But this was positive news. It was well received by many parts of the world. We'll find out whether the economic, what do you call them, magazines, if you want to call them, or the watchdogs, that's probably a better way of putting it, see this as something positive for investors in the Philippines. That's always where we're looking. We're looking at, how are the BPO industries holding together in the Philippines, etc. And the ability for the Philippines to be able to buy rice, because it's unfortunate, but they actually import more rice than they're making in the country itself. So, and I believe this is also why there's a little bit of a shift in the political environment to start focusing quite heavily on the agricultural side of the Philippines. They really have to look at some of these fields that are going to fallow, and sure, it's feeding food in some cases to the local market, but it's not helping out in the cities that rely on these outlying areas, which require massive amount of production. Okay, so what else can we talk about today? Well, I also want to get into another app that we can use to send money. A friend of ours, we met him up yesterday in Parksville, Nanoose Bay. Went up there, no videoing. This was all about having, some personal time with friends. But the way he's sending money to the Philippines is through an app called Zoom, XOOM. He finds it to be very good. Now, in their case, they don't have a remittance office in their local community, so it makes it easier for them. We have sent another Bilik Bayan box. That we find to be very, very cost effective, even though it takes 2.5 months, maybe as long as 3 with this box, because Christmas is coming up. It may be a little bit longer, but very cost effective. And I will point out that some things in the West, on an individual basis compared to the Philippines, yes, they're expensive. But if you want a set, like Lynn wanted a set of uh, trays that she can put in the oven to do, say, I'll just throw like meatloaf and this type of thing, serving trays that can go in the oven for warming, that type of thing. And so we were able to get a set in Canada that's cheaper than trying to get a Western quality set in the Philippines. Because remember, all of this stuff is considered import in the Philippines, and therefore it can be quite expensive. So something to think about when you're, especially if you're looking around your house and you're thinking, I've kind of got 6 frying pans. Because in my past videos, I've said, guys, if you're going to move to the Philippines, pack your suitcase with your things like pots and pans. These are things that you already own. Take advantage of it. Send this stuff. It really does help a lot. And even though we've been there for over 10 years now, going back and forth and such, we have found over time that taking stuff with us is more beneficial. But this time, of course, we're doing the big boxes because we're going to build a house. So we've got a lot of duplicate things that we want to see in the Philippines. Let's see, what else this week? I'm kind of doing a Financial Friday wrap up in some ways because next week there won't be one. There won't be a ticker next week. So now let me just quickly touch on the US dollar because a lot of you will be asking about the US dollar. Now, I did get a key question. If the US dollar is doing so good, shouldn't I exchange my currency into US and then hold it and then exchange it in the Philippines into pesos because I can get a US bank account there? No. Because you're going, in the case of, say, the Canadian, I have to exchange it into US and then I have to exchange it into peso. If your currency is doing really well and you have a US dollar account, this is mainly for you US citizens, right now you're at 57. If I'm you, I have $1 in my US account. Everything else is converted to pesos by now, unless you plan on taking some of that money back to the US, okay? Right now with the currency rates being so good, you really have, Canadian, US, speaking in those two currencies specifically, you shouldn't be holding any Canadian dollars, any US dollars in the Philippines right now. I wouldn't be. You got to get it converted to pesos somewhere along the way, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. If you have enough savings, again, I keep harping on this, then when the US dollar hits 47 again, et cetera, and you're trying to offset that 3 peso loss because your threshold for the US dollar is 50, you've got the 3 pesos because you've done your savings, right? But it's got to be in pesos because if you just hold on the US dollar and then now it's down at 47, yeah, you've saved your US dollar, but you haven't capitalized on the exchange rate, okay? So remember, our rents are boop, our pensions are boop, but is what's happening to the currency rates, right? And yes, the medium for the US dollar is 50, 40 for Canada, but we have to live year to year, not on a 10-year average, right? So always be thinking about that. Now is the time that you really need to manage your money well to be able to ride through those lean times. It's not like staying at home in your Western country where everything is because we have to put inflation away. Inflation exists everywhere. We have to put that away. But for the most part, you're not running into, say, your $1,000 pension check coming in being down to 990 one week and up to 1,020 the next week. It's not fluctuating, right? So think about that. You do have to manage that. Even if you're working in large dollars, guys, Normally, my videos are all about the person who wants to go to the Philippines that only has, you know, $30,000 a year to be able to live on, right? That type of thing. If you've got more money, again, I've seen some pretty wealthy guys. This last fellow that we ran into last year, he has a budget of 100,000 pesos a month, and he still went broke. He still went broke. He had 6 days before his next check came in. I said, what if you do if the check is delayed? Yeah, that's happened a couple of times too. Stone broke at 100,000 pesos. You can spend it. Remember, not every day has to be a vacation. Okay, let's wrap it up, guys. This is Financial Friday, and remember, no Financial Friday next week, and please subscribe. Later, Gators.